In section 5.4, we will be looking at polygons and perimeter. A polygon is a simple closed curve that has sides that are only line segments. So when we classify polygons, we classify them by the number of sides and vertices that they have. The vertices are the corners in which the polygon sides connect. So a triangle has 3 sides, quadrilateral 4 sides, pentagon 5 sides, hexagon 6, heptagon 7 sides, 8 sides is an octagon, a nonagon has 9 sides, and a decagon has 10 sides. There are a few other names beyond that, like undecagon and dodecagon, but you will not need to know those, and n-gon basically has n number of sides. It is important to understand that a regular polygon has all of its angles and all of its sides equal in measure. So if I put the word regular in front of any of these polygons, you now know that all of the sides and all of the angles are indeed equal in measure. Perimeter is the distance around an object. The perimeter of a polygon is equal to the sum of the lengths of all the sides of the polygon. Perimeter is measured in linear units. So what that means is, for example, in number 1, if the units are yards for each side or each dimension of the given rectangle, the perimeter would also have the units of yards, which will be different when we get to area because area has squared units. And if we were to look at volume, volume has cubic units. So we're going to start out very simple in recognizing that number 1 is a rectangle. So if I'm using the measurements that are on the picture given, I would know that these opposite sides are both 8 yards because a rectangle has 2 pairs of congruent sides and 4 right angles, and the opposite side to the 9 yards should also be 9 yards. So because I have a perfect rectangle, there is a formula for finding the perimeter. Of course, you could just add up those 4 sides, or you could do 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. So my length would be, and it actually doesn't matter which side you call the length and which side you call the width. I'm in the habit of calling the longer side the length. So my length would be 9 yards and my width would be 8 yards. So I could multiply 2 times 9, that would give me 18. Multiply 2 times 8, that will give me 16. And then when I take the sum of those 2 answers, I get 34, and I would definitely want to include my unit there as 34 yards. You would get the same answer of 34 yards if you just added 9 plus 8 plus 9 plus 8. But you do have to recognize that the figure does have 4 sides, so there are 4 total sides that need to be added together. In the next picture, in number 2, you have a parallelogram. A parallelogram, when finding the perimeter, can be treated very similarly to a rectangle, but you don't have right angles when you have a parallelogram. Versus a rectangle, the 4 corners of a rectangle are indeed 90-degree angles, okay? So here you can still say if this side is 31 meters that the opposite side would be the same. And if this slanted side here, that lateral side is 26 meters, then this side would be 26 meters as well. So you could technically use the perimeter relationship again. I just wouldn't call them L and W necessarily because usually we use base and height, but for a parallelogram, the height would be, the line that I just drew in. That 26 meters is not the height. It's called the lateral side. So I'm going to avoid writing 2L plus 2W since this isn't a rectangle, but I'm still going to basically do the same thing where I multiply 2 times 31 plus 2 times 26. And then after I do that, I can determine that the perimeter is 114 meters when complete. Okay. You could, of course, also add up 31 plus 26 plus 31 plus 26. The important thing is understand that the perimeter of a polygon is equal to the sum of the lengths of its sides. Now, number 3 and number 4 are a little bit different. They're a little bit different simply because you don't have a singular shape. You have kind of shapes that are put together. So what we're really going to try to do is we're going to try to find the sum of all these sides that I'm tracing. But the problem is right now I only have these two sides given. And I'm just going to go ahead and be honest with you in telling you that I really need to give you a little more information to solve this problem. So I'm going to add a couple of givens here. I'm going to also give you that this, oops, excuse me, let me fix that. I don't mean to use the highlighter. I want to switch to a pen. I'm going to give you that this length right here is 9 yards because I do need to give you some more information. And this length is 3 yards. The question is, once I've given you those two, along with the 19 yards and the 39 yards, what would this length be? What would this length be? Because we have to figure those lengths out, and now we actually do have enough information to finish the problem. We have to figure those two lengths out because without those two lengths, we're not going to be able to determine the perimeter. So take a moment, pause the video, and see if you can figure out what would those two question marks be so that we can determine the perimeter. So to figure out this question mark, what I like to do is say, okay, let me look at this side from all the way across, from this edge to this edge, and recognize that that whole length would be 19 yards. But because this little piece right here would be 3 yards, my question mark would actually be 19 minus 3, which would give me a total of 16 yards for this question mark. Were you able to come up with that? I can use the same thinking. Let me get a little, I'm going to use a different color here. I'll pick a blue so that I can look at this length here, this question mark, okay? If I go from bottom to top of this figure, I know that that would match up with the 39, but if I recognize, now maybe you can see why these need to be given, if I could recognize that that dotted line would have to be 9 yards, well then I know that 39 minus 9 would actually be 30 yards, giving me 30 yards for this question mark. Now, again, I had to give you more information that was originally presented on the worksheet. I really needed to give you this 3 yards and this 9 yards to be able to figure out those missing dimensions. But what I also want you guys to realize is that there might be different ways to split up your picture. It really depends on the picture. So sometimes there are more ways to do that when you are figuring out these problems, okay? And now we're ready, now that we know that this question mark here is actually, I'm going to just clean up my space a little bit, 16 yards, right? And that this question mark here is 30 yards, I can go ahead and add up all those values to figure out the distance around my polygon, and that would give me my perimeter. So P is going to equal 39 plus 3 plus 30 plus 16, out of space there, so I'm going to go down here, plus 9 plus 19. So let's see if I got them all. I got 39, I got the 3, I always like to double check. I got the 30 here, I just kind of trace it. I got the 16, I got the 9, and I got the 19. So if I add all those up, I should end up with 116 yards as my final perimeter for number 3. Same idea in number 4 as in number 3, but number 4 is a little more involved. One thing is you have to make sure when you see like these numbers on the sides, what side goes with which number. So this 7, oops, excuse me, let me fix that. this 7 kilometers is meant for this side. Now, something I think is important to mention, these diagrams are not drawn to scale, so you want to definitely pay attention to the numerical values because a lot of times the diagrams are not drawn to scale. But you also may want to recognize that this side here is also 7 kilometers. So before I find the perimeter, I want to kind of go through and make sure I know what numbers go with what side. So this side here goes with 16 kilometers. Okay, so now I can start thinking about, okay, I need to find the distance around this object here that I'm tracing. I need the sum of all those lengths, but I am missing a few that I'm going to have to fill in. So I'm going to grab my little red pen here and recognize that if this side here is 11 kilometers, that this side over here is also 11 kilometers. And this side is going to be the sum, I guess I'm going to change that light blue to a red mark now, the sum of those 3 lengths across. Sometimes people will confuse that 7 in there, but the 7 is really meant for the vertical sides that you see. So this is going to be 12 plus 16 plus 9, giving you a grand total of 37 kilometers along this bottom side. So now I think I have all the sides and all the information I need to find the perimeter. So take a moment to see if you end up with the correct perimeter. Pause the video if necessary. In number 4, if I add the 37 plus the 11 twice, since I have 11 here and 11 here, plus the 30, well, let's not do that. Let's go, we'll add this, and then we'll need to add 7 actually twice, right? Because we have a 7 for each one of these sides. So plus 12 plus 9 plus, you could do 7 times 2, or you could just do 7 plus 7. Did I miss any? I think I may have missed this 16 right here. Let's see. Yes, I believe I missed that 16, so let me add that. Because now I've got, so let me double check my work, because that's going to be important, right? I got the 37 here. I got these 2 11s. You can see I'm kind of modeling what I want you to do. I want you to double check to make sure you didn't miss any sides on problems like this. So there's my 12, there's my 9. I got my 2 7s, right? And I almost forgot about this 16. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my calculator, and I'm going to type that in to see that I get a grand total perimeter of 110 kilometers. So that's my answer to number 4. Now, I guess we could have also did the 37 twice to shorten up this 12 plus 16 plus 9 along the top. So this 12 plus 16 plus 9 is basically a second one of these 37s. But the key is we definitely don't want to forget that there are 2 of those vertical sides that give us 7 kilometers.